the ghost ship of cryptozoology, the Migo Lake Monster Mix-Up. For decades, global monster hunters, international film crews, and well-funded Japanese expeditions traveled into the South Pacific on a high-stakes hunt for a legendary apex predator. They were searching for the Migo, a terrifying 30-foot aquatic sea serpent described as possessing a horse-like head, smooth reptilian skin, and a vertical, serrated tail that could cut through water like a chainsaw. Early international research papers and sensational media reports confidently pointed their fingers at a specific location, claiming this prehistoric relic was trapped inside the deep volcanic lakes of the Philippine archipelago. But the global monster hunting community was completely blind to a massive, embarrassing truth. They were looking on the entirely wrong continent. I'm an expat living out in the provinces, and you're watching Mysteries of the Philippines. The mapmaker's blunder. When you live out here in the islands, you quickly realize that the history of these provinces is often rewritten, distorted, or completely misunderstood by Westerners looking from afar. The tropical wilderness of the Pacific is vast, complex, and filled with thousands of islands that look remarkably similar on old military charts and early maritime maps. During the golden age of modern cryptozoology in the late 20th century, a single translation error and a piece of bad geographical record-keeping created a legendary ghost story. For nearly 20 years, Global Files maintained a thick dossier on a massive, prehistoric lake monster supposedly terrorizing local fishermen right here in the Philippines. It was a mystery that captured the imagination of the world, generating massive headlines, despite the fact that the creature itself didn't exist anywhere near Philippine waters. The anatomy of the Migo. To understand why international explorers were so desperate to find this beast, you have to look at the terrifying descriptions that filled the journals of early cryptozoologists. The Migo was not described as a standard giant eel or a displaced saltwater crocodile. It was tracked as a potential living fossil, a surviving zeuglodon, or an ancient, serpentine whale from the Eocene epoch. According to the early reports circulating in Tokyo and London, the beast stretched up to 30 feet in length, moving through the water with an undulating, vertical motion that created distinct humps on the surface. Witness accounts claimed it possessed a long, elegant neck topped with a head resembling a dark horse, and a terrifyingly unique tail adorned with rigid, serrated scales that resembled a prehistoric steering oar, perfectly evolved for navigating high-speed underwater currents. The millions invested in the hunt. The legend reached a fever pitch in the late 1980s and early 1990s, catching the attention of wealthy Japanese adventure television networks and international research groups. Armed with expensive underwater sonar arrays, high-velocity camera rigs, and deep-water scuba equipment, these foreign teams touched down in Southeast Asia, ready to make scientific history. They spent massive amounts of capital hiring local outrigger boats, mapping out deep-water volcanic lakes throughout Luzon and the Visayas, convinced that the next sonar sweep would reveal the multi-ton silhouette of the prehistoric serpent. The expeditions were met with polite confusion by the provincial locals, while the villagers certainly had their own rich folklore of water spirits. Like the Siokoi, none of them had ever heard of a 30-foot horse-headed sea serpent named the Migo. The mystery exploded globally in 1994 when a high-profile international expedition group emerged from the jungle, claiming they had finally captured the holy grail of cryptozoology. They released a brief, heavily scrutinized piece of film that sent shockwaves through monster hunting circles around the globe. The video, shot across a misty, volcanic crater lake surrounded by dense tropical foliage, captured a massive dark object breaching the calm surface. The footage clearly showed a large, distinct animal moving with immense power, its dark back breaking the water in a series of rhythmic, terrifying humps before diving back down into the absolute depths. The media immediately branded it as definitive proof of the great Philippine lake monster, cementing the archipelago as the home of one of the world's greatest modern cryptid mysteries. But as the years rolled on into the late 1990s, the pristine narrative surrounding the 1994 expedition footage began to show massive, undeniable structural cracks. Sharp-eyed botanists and local geologists who viewed the internationally broadcast documentary noticed that the specific species of ferns, trees, and mountain typography visible in the background of the lake footage didn't align with the native ecology of the Philippines. Furthermore, investigative cryptozoologists began tracking the logistical flight, manifests, and travel logs of the original film crews. They discovered a highly disturbing discrepancy. The expedition teams had never actually cleared customs or rented equipment anywhere near the specific Philippine lakes named in their official press releases. The entire global monster hunting community had spent years celebrating a breakthrough that was built entirely on a foundation of the massive international blunder was finally blown wide, open by two of the most respected names in the history of cryptozoology, British biologist Dr. Carl Schuker and legendary French researcher Bernard Heuvelmans. Horrified by the growing confusion and bad data spreading through scientific journals, the duo launched a meticulous, top-to-bottom audit of the entire Migo file. They tracked the original source material back through decades of messy media handoffs, translated old Japanese logbooks, and cross-referenced the coordinates of the 1994 expedition. What they discovered was a comedy of errors of epic proportions. The foreign researchers had indeed traveled to a tropical paradise, and they had indeed filmed a genuine, unexplained aquatic mystery. But a massive bureaucratic mix-up during production had erroneously labeled the entire archive under the wrong country code. In their explosive corrective reports, Schuker and Heuvelmans revealed the truth. The Migo was never a Philippine monster. The original, indigenous folklore of the horse-headed serpent belonged entirely to the tribal communities of New Britain, a large, isolated island operating under the governance of Papua New Guinea, located thousands of miles away across the open ocean. The famous 1994 expedition footage hadn't been filmed in a serene Philippine province. It had been shot on the dark, treacherous waters of Lake Dakatawa, a massive, remote caldera lake located in the volcanic heart of West New Britain. The word Migo was a local Papua New Guinean term, but because early Western writers clumped all South Pacific Island mysteries into one giant generic category, the story spent decades filed under the wrong nation. While the correction resolved the embarrassing geographical mix-up for the Philippines, it opened a fascinating new chapter for the real location. Lake Dakatawa is an incredibly unique, isolated ecosystem, a freshwater crater lake with no natural outlets to the sea, completely surrounded by active volcanic vents. The fact that a 30-foot, unidentified creature was legitimately caught on film swimming in those specific, hyper-isolated waters remains an authentic scientific mystery to this day. Biologists have suggested the footage might capture a highly displaced, saltwater crocodile that somehow scaled the volcanic ridges, or an entirely new species of giant aquatic reptile completely unique to Papua New Guinea. But for the Philippines, the mystery was officially solved. Our lakes were completely cleared of the shadow of the Migo. The lessons of the map. The strange case of the Migo lake monster mix-up stands as one of the most famous cautionary tales in the history of modern exploration. It is a powerful reminder of how easily the outside world can project its own fantasies, errors, and messy assumptions onto the geography of the islands, transforming a local tribal legend from Papua New Guinea into an urban legend of the Philippines. I still love taking my regular walks along the quiet provincial roads out here, looking out over our beautiful, calm lakes and winding rivers. Our islands are deeply beautiful, and they possess more than enough real, authentic folklore, aswangs, and ancient mysteries to keep us watching the shadows for a lifetime. We don't need to borrow monsters from other shores because the deep waters of the Philippines already know how to keep their own secrets perfectly hidden.